Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture with an emphasis on our favorites. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is Mike Pollock. Mike Pollock is a veteran New York voice actor best known as the voice of Dr. Eggman in the Sonic the Hedgehog series for over 20 years. His animation credits include Ultimate Muscle, Kirby Right Back Atcha, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Viva Pinata, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Pokémon, and Berserk. He's also voiced characters in films like Weathering With You, Promare, and A Cat in Paris. And he's worked on commercials for brands like IHOP, Pepsi, and Verizon. Beyond voice work, Mike's write comedy bits and song parodies. Please let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet. Be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links to them are down below. And with all that being said,
it's Razzle Dazzle time!
Hello, Mike. Thank you so much for being on the show today. How are you?
Well, Jared, we're having a little nasty weather, both of us, but
yes,
apart from that, it's dry inside, so I guess that's as well as can be expected. How are you?
If I was doing any better, I'd have to hire somebody to help me enjoy it.
I love that.
Thank you for asking. So, a quick Kickstarter question. It's kind of a two-parter. Do you prefer to go by Dr. Robotnik or Dr. Eggman?
Well, the scripts that I've gotten ever since 2003 have always said Dr. Eggman.
Okay. And
apparently the preferred the preferred label. So good enough for them, good enough for me.
Understood. And the follow-up to that is, how do you like your eggs?
Poached whenever possible.
Okay, understood. Thank you for playing along. But for real, let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and how would you describe the musical background of your childhood?
Well, let's see. Long Island, New York. A little town called Roslyn Heights, not such a little town, but the lovely, lovely hamlet of Roslyn Heights, New York. I was a child of the 70s, so classic 70s groups, little Beatles, I guess little Stones in the background, a lot of 70s bubblegum pop and just the hits of the 70s. But in the background, there was always some show tunes because mom and dad had some Broadway LPs, and I found my way into show tunes that way. And novelty music. Tom Lehrer was a big influence throughout my life. Alan Sherman, comedy albums like You Don't Have to Be Jewish, just informed my comedy and my life throughout the years. So that's what I was listening to. But a lot of radio and a lot of talk radio as I reached high school in the 80s. I found my way to talk radio.
I love that so much. Okay, cool. Did you have any instruments growing up?
Allegedly the guitar and the drums. I don't think either of those would pass a band audition at this time, but I could probably still keep a beat on the drums, and I think I know about 3 chords on the guitar.
It's better than 2.
Yes. And there are plenty of songs that just use 3 chords. So there's that.
There you go. So you said your parents were playing show tunes and stuff like that. Anything else? Like any specific vinyls that they play that you're like, oh, wow, okay.
I actually had a fairly large collection of children's records, which was a genre that passed, fortunately, with the demise of the LP. But a lot of them were soundtracks to cartoons, like Hanna-Barbera had a whole series of them. And they were cartoons that I had never seen, but they were just the audio soundtracks on these records. So I had to imagine who the characters were and what they did. But they were voiced by the legends themselves, Dawes Butler and Don Messick and Mel Blanc for the Warner Brothers ones. And so I got to focus on voiceover acting while I was listening to children's records and getting subconscious inspiration from them.
That's incredible. So you had to visualize what they look like before you even saw them. Once you eventually saw those cartoons, did like your mental image kind of fit, or was it like way off?
They were such obscure cartoons in the canon of Hanna-Barbera. Rough and Ready, a dog and cat duo. That I don't think I haven't trolled YouTube to see what's available, but I've not actually seen them in animation form. But it wasn't a great show, and they weren't great stories, but the voices were key. And I'll have to, I guess I should, after all these years, I should look on YouTube and see what I can find. But the shows weren't great, the characterizations were, and that's what I loved.
Understood. What were you listening to on the radio?
Let's see. In New York radio, we had the legends on WABC, legendary jocks like Dan Ingram and Ron Lundy and George Michael. Probably Dan Ingram was the appointment listening, and Harry Harrison in the morning on the way to school. And then as I got to talk radio, there was a guy named Gene Clavin who had made the rounds through New York. He was great because he was a character voice guy, and he would do bits with himself in character, live and I guess improvised as part of his show. And I found that fascinating. I went to a live remote of his once and met him, and was, I guess, part of a live bit with one of my schoolmates. And that was a great honor, but he was a swell guy. He is not as remembered as he should be. His son is still working in radio, not doing comedy bits. He's a political talk, but Gene Clavin, genius, and not a lot of air checks of him on YouTube or anywhere else. Right. But he was brilliant. And then other legendary morning guys in the morning, Ted Brown, who was something, William B. Williams playing big band music, which I had a passing interest in. But Gene Clavin was probably, as far as enjoyment and inspiration, he was the guy. And then as I got older and got into radio, worked with some really nice guys that I will shout out. Bill Baker on the radio in Syracuse for a while. Similar, he did one character more than anything else, but same kind of thing. He would improvise with himself as his assistant Bernice, his secretary, and that was just as magical. And getting to see him do that in person was really fun.
That's so cool. Yeah, we'll talk about your time in radio in a second, but before that, I want to ask you, what was the first band or musician that really got your attention when you were young?
Probably as an artist was Tom Lehrer. I heard bands on the radio, KC and the Sunshine Band and ABBA, and okay, they were nice. They were background music, not nobody that I'd want to follow and get their whole canon in my head. Yeah. But when I found Tom Lehrer, who was featured on one of the radio comedy shows that I followed, I fell in love with his clever lyrics, his catchy tunes. Bought all his albums, of which there were basically 3 in various versions, and got the sheet music, memorized pretty much all the songs, and continued to follow him. He has an off-Broadway show, a compilation of his work. Tried to do that in college. The rights were available, but we didn't get them. But I remember trying to find that information out, being the inventive and idea guy that I was. I found his number in the phone book and called him in Massachusetts as a fanboying kid. Yeah. And hello, Mr. Lehrer, I'm calling about your show, Tomfoolery. Are the rights available? And he said, well, Samuel French will have it, but not yet. And I said, thanks, I'll keep an eye out for it. Such a thing that crossed so many boundaries then, but rather proud of myself. Got the information I needed. Of course. Didn't do anything with it. But someday, perhaps, I'll be part of that show. So was one of his records like the first physical music you've owned that was yours, or was it something else? No, that was the children's records included some music. They were little story-based fairy tale things with tunes. But no, I'm guessing the first actual records that I had with music would have been the Partridge Family, because I knew them from their TV show. Yeah. And their songs were also kind of catchy and mostly fake and studio musicians. But I had a lot of Partridge Family albums, which still lived in my head. And Sesame Street. As a toddler, they had record albums too. They had Kitty Records, and I had them, and I memorized some of those. And Mr. Rogers, too. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he had his albums out. So, yeah, children's records actually informed a lot of my musical sensibilities. And I draw on those occasionally to this very day. I love that. Okay. This next question I have requires a bit of context. So here we go. I work at WGCU, public media, NPR, PBS in Southwest Florida. And we have this, I'm a producer and audio engineer for the station. And we have this other show, this other podcast called 3 Song Stories that I'm also a part of. The show's basic premise is, we tell people's biography through music, and the guests will come in, they pick 3 songs that every time they listen to this song or to these songs, they're immediately transported back to a time and place that they have a significant story associated with it, whether it's funny, silly, hilarious, serious, but like heartfelt, doesn't matter, whatever you want it to be.
I want to ask you, do you have one song story off the top of your head?
Great question, and I'm going to have to give that some thought, but not too much thought. I'm going to say our wedding song, where my wife and I danced to Make You Feel My Love, the Garth Brooks version. It's a Bob Dylan song covered by lots of people, most recently Adele. That's how people listening to current music would know it. That was our first song for our wedding. And what was kind of cool when I was working in radio, which again we'll get to, I went to the occasional press junket, and one of them I was sent to was for Garth Brooks, because he was promoting his appearance on Saturday Night Live at the time back in the 90s. And I had a couple of questions. My question on the record was about his character Mango, who was, excuse me, his appearance on SNL with the character Mango portrayed by Chris Kattan. And he and Garth had a moment of perhaps romance. No one was really sure. And I asked him what the future held for Garth Brooks and Mango. But the off-the-record question when we were done, I went up to him, very approachable, even with members of the press, such as I was, and I wanted to thank him for singing at my wedding. He said, "Oh, cool. What was it?" I said, "It was Make You Feel My Love, and use your version." And I said, "Great, and I'll have to tell Bob Dylan that you really liked it. Thanks." So that was cool. So that was a bonus of the joy of the first dance, and such as that dancing was at the time, and getting to thank the artist retroactively for his recorded appearance.
To make you feel my
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. How does that song fit into your life today?
We listen to show tunes all the time, and it's in one of the current Broadway shows that I'm going to look up. You said to take a moment to Google things, so hang on, I have to look up which song that is.
No problem.
In the Bob Dylan jukebox musical Girl from the North Country, it's part of one of the songs, like a Rolling Stone and Make You Feel My Love, which if you can pull that up and reference it without angering ASCAP and BMI, it's part of that little medley. And so we listen to show tunes from show tune radio stations, mostly from the UK, probably illegally, don't tell anyone. But that song comes up in rotation in the shows we listen to. And my wife and I always give each other a sentimental knowing glance whenever it does.
Aw, I love that so much. Well, speaking of, let's jump into your career. Let's start. I've had other voice actors on the show that got their start in radio and being emceeing for the radios and radio hosts, stuff like that. For example, Neil Ross and David Kaye, of course, they became voice actors through radio. Clearly you did too. Not only did they work through radio, but they were listening to radio while they were young, while they were a kid, and that left a lasting impression on them. And of course, like you said earlier, like you alluded to, the same thing kind of happened as well. So I wanna ask, what inspired you to pursue this type of career, going to radio first, I'm assuming, and then to voice acting?
Sure. As a kid, I loved theater. I loved radio. Both being in theater and school theater. I caught the bug in a third grade pageant, a Roman festival, I think, wearing a toga and a crown of tinfoil leaves, and got a round of applause for saying whatever my dopey line was, and loving that moment, and said, okay, theater is a cool thing. But when college came, and it came time to pick a career, I had my love of radio as well, which I'd done some high school radio. There was a college radio station that had a high school radio program, and I was part of that. And then I was a caller to a radio call-in show that went off the air, and because I had this in at the local college radio station, said, I know a guy at a radio station, I can get your show on. And they put me on the show as the engineer, which was a fun little thing. Ended up doing a summer theater program at that school so that I could still be part of this radio show during the summer. And that was the summer that the show got canceled, but still we had a great old time. So college came, and I explored careers in radio, because neither radio nor theater are particularly stable jobs. They're all fairly short-lived. When the show is over on theater, you're out of a job. And when the radio station kicks you to the curb, you're out of a job. But radio looked a little more stable at the time, so I pursued that at Syracuse University. Studied there, went to the college station, and then we went on a field trip in our radio class to the local hot AC and news talk combination station, AM and an FM. And I was smitten and fell in love with the place. And everyone was looking at the newsroom for internships and programming and sales.
Yeah.
And I went to the production guy and said, "Hey, do you have any interns?" And no one had ever asked him that, but he said, "Sure, I guess so." And I became an intern. And my first task back in the 80s, when in the days of typewriters and very early computers, was cataloging the record library. He had a whole bunch of singles for his oldies show that he was doing.
Grunt work.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a typewriter and some index cards. Type these up. Did that, and after a few weeks, finished it. Got to the end of the record library, which was astonishing to everyone involved. And the next question was, okay, now what? He didn't know, but he directed me to the program director, and I became a part-time overnight weekend jock, running Sexually Speaking with the recently departed Dr. Ruth Westheimer. We were a local affiliate in Syracuse. And then I did 2 hours of More Favorites, Less Talk from, I believe, midnight to 2. And that was my first shift for a while. And then moved up to slightly better positions, but also filled in on the AM side as the midday host for a couple of hours for a while, which was pretty cool. And then that ballooned into a career at a rock station in Rochester, New York for about a year, and then back down to my hometown of New York in the Long Island region for a gig at a radio syndication company, dubbing tapes for their syndication shows, and then eventually writing show prep and comedy bits and song parodies for radio stations nationwide. And that lasted till they kicked me to the curb in 2008 when I was able to fall back full-time on this voiceover thing.
That's incredible. Okay, before we get to the voiceover, I want to talk about radio. As being in radio myself, now different kind of radio, public media radio, but still radio. I have I don't want to say similar story, but I also started off here as an intern. I was taking, while I was still in college, before I graduated, I was taking a few classes or whatever, and my professor and I, we started getting close and recognizing each other and stuff like that. Professor Darlin, shout outs to him. He started getting to know who I am as a person, my interests and stuff like that. So the next semester, I'm supposed to take an internship course to get my degree in journalism, right? So luck will have it that Professor Darlin was also the professor for that internship course. And he sent in the syllabus, there's a whole list of organizations you can fill out internship forms for or whatever, and I look through it all and I'm like, none of this excites me. I don't I'm not interested in any of this type of stuff. And I talked to him about it, and he's like, you like old school type of music, because I love Motown and Michael Jackson, Prince, Earth, Wind and Fire, and all that type of stuff, So he knew about my music taste, and he knows that I have my own podcast, my own show. So he was like, I have this deal for you. At the radio station that's on campus. It's not a college radio station, but it's legit. It's a legit station, and they have a spot open for you. And I'm like, okay, cool. I walk into the station for an interview, and it was an interview for an internship for the podcast 3 Song Stories that I mentioned before. Stayed there, I was the intern for that show specifically, not a station intern. So I was only running the board and doing some grunt work stuff too, like cataloging stuff, all that type, data entry or whatever. And that lasted about, I don't know, half a year. Then they offered me a part-time job, and then a year or so later, I'm now a full-time producer and audio engineer for WGCU. So it's crazy how much, and to preface, I'm so sorry, but to preface, I didn't know I wanted to be in radio or any of this type of stuff before this. At first I was still not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, as most college students are, but I knew I wanted to be in some kind of media production or something. So because of this internship, because of this one thing that happened, it really helped me expand my horizons and really open my world, open my eyes to something that I really love that I didn't know I would like before, So the doors of opportunities open, and it's crazy how much that can affect a person's life. You know what I mean?
Sure. It's entropy, I think, might be the right word, but random events colliding and suddenly magic happens. So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go
You
ahead.
don't necessarily need a path in life. A path might very well find you.
Oh, I love that. So radio. So how did you find voice acting? Was that always like, in the background? Did you always have that in mind? When did you first discover voice acting?
It started with the stage acting that I was doing in
Okay.
school, community theater, and that sort of thing. And especially when I hit the world of commercial radio, there was a brief time in the school's public station as well, where not a great fit. I was a bit more boisterous than the smooth jazz format they were trying to carry out, which is fine. I would fit in as well as possible, and then not so much. But by the time I reached the commercial station, the hot AC station that it was, there were commercials that needed to be done, and I got asked to be voices in some of them, and that was the coolest thing. And they were not necessarily the greatest performances, but for example, the production director who I mentioned earlier had a bit of a rogue streak in him, and when something would piss him off, he would protest silently. So we got some commercial. I want to say it was for the Automobile Association, AAA, and it was some national co-op spot where they send you a script and you localize it with your own talent. So he didn't have anyone else to play the female love interest, and he didn't really care. So he said, "Come here, come be the girl in this." Okay, this is going to be the best I can do. I said, "Sure, great." So,
And Ella was born.
yeah, kind of. He was doing a sort of a Ralph Cramden, "Hours," and "Charlie," and we did the whole script, and it aired like that. And, okay. And then comedy bits for the morning show followed. And by the time I got to the radio syndication outfit, I was doing more comedy bits and song parodies. So much so that when I was relieved of my duties at the syndication outfit the first time, because there were some layoffs, I was able to look back on the comedy bits that I did, and I built a demo tape out of them. I came back, I think, for a day to borrow their equipment, because it was before the world of digital audio editing being at everyone's fingertips.
Yeah.
And so I used I think it wasn't quite the reel-to-reel machine at the time, but I believe there was some primitive digital audio editor that I had found at a trade show,
Right.
and recommended, and they got one. And I built a demo tape with that, shopped it around on cassette, and that ended up being liked by what turned out to be an episode of Pokémon and an anime called Demon Fighter Kocho. And that started a little bit of work with networking. My name got around. And then I got coaching from a voiceover coach. He helped me get in front of agents, and agents got me into commercials and a lot more networking, and that blossomed into where we are today.
That's beautiful. I don't want to get too far away from it, but your time in theater. Now, this is both like normal theater, for lack of a better word, and also musical?
Yes, straight plays and
Got it.
musicals.
Straight plays and musical.
Yeah, a lot of straight plays in school, some straight plays in community theater, and musicals too along the way. So sure, I can carry a tune. I can't dance, so many musicals I have found myself tending bar in the big musical numbers, which is probably best for everyone. You back there behind the bar. Okay, thank you very much. But sure, those were fun. My Bud Frump in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, memorable, if only to me.
Yeah. How did you get that bug for musical theater to begin with?
Those show tunes that mom
Show
and dad
tunes
had on the
still,
LPs. So I listened to Fiddler on the Roof, Man of La Mancha, some Rodgers and Hammerstein shows, because show tunes on the radio, not really a thing.
Right.
There wasn't digital streaming, but there were these. So I found those. And then musicals happened at school. We did Girl Crazy, the Gershwin musical from the 1930s. You have to specify now. It's a new century. And Shenandoah, an excellent show from the 80s. I did Oklahoma at our Vacation Homes Country Club. We did a very pared down version of that, and Pajama Game. And cool, this is fun. And I think I when there weren't really parts for some 15-year-old kid, I made myself a part by singing, I think, a Beatles song in Pajama Game. Didn't really fit, don't know why, but they allowed it. Okay, cool. And yeah, I auditioned for stuff, and I would book stuff, and that was really cool.
Yeah. Do you remember the first play of any kind that you attended?
Well, there was the on Broadway we saw Grease, the original long-running production.
Wow.
Vague memories of that. We saw Men of La Mancha on Broadway and Fiddler on Broadway. Don't remember if it was the original production. The memories are vague. I just know, saw the show, don't remember the details. But,
Got it.
Yeah, we went to the classic shows.
That's great. That's awesome. Now let's get into most likely the most famous role you've played or are still playing, Dr. Eggman. Now, you are the second Dr. Eggman I've had on the show. The first being Gary Chalk, who was Dr. Eggman in The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, or
Sure.
Dr. Robotnik, technically. Can you share some memorable moments or challenges about bringing this character to life? Like, how you got this role for starters and so on?
Sure. The biggest challenge was booking the role in the first place. It was happening at 4Kids Productions. I was already working as a freelance voice talent there, doing stuff in Kirby Right Back At Ya and Ultimate Muscle. And the production team that was doing Kirby Right Back At Ya got assigned to do Sonic X. We had an all-hands meeting with all the actors, which they never did, but for some reason it was necessary. And revealed at that meeting amongst us was that they have a new property coming out called, codenamed Project X, which turned out to be Sonic X. Cole didn't think anything of it until a few weeks later when the producer came to me and said, "We're really interested in having you cast as Dr. Eggman for Sonic X." Cool. Here are some clips of the guy who did it before. It was clips of Dean Bristow. Take these, study them, work out a sound-alike impression, and come back and audition, which I did. So I came back doing Dean Bristow. I'm Dean Bristow. Did an audition like that. I guess no one was convinced. There was a set of callbacks where I went back in and I'm Dean Bristow. And then I think there was a third round of callbacks, still not convinced. And by the third round, I guess they figured, okay, you'll do. And I became Dr. Eggman for Sonic X.
That's
and
incredible.
If you listen, thank you. If you listen to the first few episodes, you'll hear that Dr. Eggman sounds very deep and down here like Dean Bristow. But by the second or third week of recording, the producer and director approached me and said, "Okay, we love what you're doing, but we'd like to add more peaks and valleys to the voice to allow for more comedy," because I was playing very menacing and evil, the way Dean Bristow did, but they wanted comedy. So they gave me the template of Martin Short's Jiminy Glick character, who starts up way up high and then goes way down low.
Yeah.
And that's how I added peaks and valleys, which became the basis of the Dr. Eggman voice that I'm still doing today. And then along the way, a few more weeks in, the producer came in and asked the director while I was in a session, "Have we found anyone to play Ella the maid yet?" Excuse me. And he said, "No, we haven't." And he looked my way and said, "How about Mike?" Huh? Okay. What'd you have in mind? He said, "I don't know. What do you think would fit?" And I said, "Well, she looks vaguely Latina." And there was a time in place years ago, and that was not a problem. To have cross-gendered, vaguely racist performances. So I said, "How about something like this?" And he said, "Okay, try it." He recorded something, gave him a sample, came back the next week. So, "Did you find anyone for Ella?" "Yeah, we got someone else to do it." "Oh, okay, good." Because I'm thinking there are actual Latina females that might be more appropriate, but okay. And then the week after that, because we recorded about once a week, now you're doing Ella. "Really? Okay." And I became Ella the maid, which a lot of people, if they didn't know, they didn't know. But now you know.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised. So I grew up with Sonic X and Sonic the Hedgehog, period. And I absolutely Sonic X is probably the best Sonic show out there. And when I first heard Ella, I'm like, oh, I know a guy is voicing this, but it wasn't until recently, Colleen O'Shaughnessy, the voice of Tails, she's amazing, put us together, and I was doing research, and I'm like, holy shit, Dr. Eggman is Ella? What? That's crazy. That's awesome.
As I love to say, my versatility is highly underrated. That's just one example.
Clearly, yeah. Did you play any of the games at all before or in prep for Dr. Eggman?
No, I'm not a gamer. The
Understood.
game that I liked when as a kid was in the arcade was Trivia Whiz, which I'm a trivia guy. The call-in show that we did for a while was a call-in trivia show because I love trivia. Trivia Whiz, from the primitive days of arcades, was a very small set of questions that repeated endlessly. So the more you played, as I did, the more you memorized the answers to questions you didn't know. And I topped the leaderboard on Trivia Whiz purely because I memorized all the multiple choice answers. So there was that. But as far as games of skill versus what was essentially a game of chance or game of rote memorization, games of skill, I don't have the coordination or patience for those. I'm delighted to perform in them, but as far as playing them, I'm not the target audience.
Yeah, understood. But yeah, I have to just give you props to like where it's due. You know, you have been probably the longest running voice of such an iconic character, an iconic villain for over 20 years now, not only in animation, but also in the video games themselves. You're legendary. Like there's no other way to put it. It's incredible, you know, like every single thing about Dr. Eggman, other than the live action movies now, has been you. And that's insane. That's incredible to have a character with you for so long. How do you prepare for not just Dr. Eggman, but for your other roles? For your career of voice acting, you've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other for animation and video games. How do you prepare for all these types of roles? Are there any particular types of characters you enjoy voicing the most?
I love working. But I love the challenge of every new gig. That's one of the joys of voiceover. You don't get bored because gigs are usually very short-lived, and every gig is something new unless it's a recurring character.
Yeah.
There is very little preparation because in most cases you don't know very much about the character. You might see something, a description on the audition, and the director will tell you when you're recording, okay, here's what happens in the scene, here's what happens in this story. But generally, there's not a lot of opportunity to prep. The exception, most notable exception, if you're doing a sound-alike for a historical character. If the person exists, you try to find recordings unless they provide recordings, and you try and do a voice match. So for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2003 edition on 4Kids, I played King Kirby, who is a very thinly veiled tribute to legendary comic book artist and writer Jack Kirby.
Yep.
And they had me, they said, okay, you're basically playing Jack Kirby. I said, really? I think I'd better go find some recordings. There weren't many. The ones I was able to find were actually behind a gatekeeper, who I won't shame here, but a legendary animation comic expert in the field who knew Kirby and would have been able to answer my question. But when I emailed him, because he was available by email, he said, you know, Jack really hated being turned into a cartoon, so I'm not going to help you. Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. Found at least one recording, and he sounded like my uncle-in-law, Uncle Pat. Oh, okay, I guess we're going to make him sound kind of like Uncle Pat with a little bit of a New York thing going on, and all right, we'll make him that. So that's what he became. So that was more prep than I would normally do. Otherwise, if there's a script, I will go through and at least highlight my lines and look them over. But really, in voiceover, it's very clinical and results oriented. So you're in there recording, and let's get the best takes we can. Do it till you get it right. And then when it's right, we move on to the next bit. So no matter whether you're rehearsing or not, are you making the director happy while you're there doing the dialogue? And if you are, great, move on.
Right. Understood. Yeah, go ahead.
I've also learned, I've learned that being too prepared, for example, Meat from Ultimate Muscle, sounded like a truck driver when I did him, but the original Meat sounded more like Ella the Maid. He was a little kid played by a little girl. So if I had researched Meat, and Ultimate Muscle and a lot of the shows at 4Kids were adaptations, not direct translations, which for the diehard anime fans who might be watching, that was also a bit of a bone of contention. But if I had gone to the director to say, you know, based on my research in the original Japanese, Meat would never have, shut up! We're doing our script! Shut up! Okay, then. So best not to fight with the director's vision with being too much of a know-it-all.
Of course, that's a good tip for any voice actors listening.
Sure. Research is great, but the director's in charge. So if their vision is vastly different from the source material, shh.
Are there any influences or role models that you look up to for voice acting, for your comedy writing, for theater?
Sure. From a kid, the days of being a kid, the cast of Rocky and Bullwinkle, June Foray, Bill Scott, Paul Frees. Also, another example of my resourcefulness, just like I called Tom Lehrer when I was a kid. When I was in high school for our college radio show with the call-in quiz show, we had a running bit, which was too silly to recount now, but we tried to get a bunch of celebrities, our favorite celebrities, to record that. So I was in a little alternative school program for a year or two, I think a year till they kicked me out in high school. And part of that, we were sequestered from the main school with an office with a phone. So I had the old touch tone phones that your parents might remember. And I had a Radio Shack suction cup phone pickup, which you would stick on the handset of the phone, and you'd be able to record fairly poorly and primitively. But I hooked that up to my trusty cassette recorder, found the numbers for the agents for the surviving cast members, and got on the phone Bill Scott, June Foray, Paul Frees, and said, "Hello, I'm a high school kid with a college radio show, and we have a catchphrase. Can we get you to do your characters?" Which is exactly what I would dissuade anyone today from doing with me, because it runs into all sorts of contractual things, but at least they hadn't done their characters in 10 or 20 years at that point. So they were all generous and accommodating, and they all agreed, which I was shocked by.
Cool, yeah.
So I have Bullwinkle and Boris Badenov and Rocky and Natasha and all their other famous characters doing our little bit, which was great, except for Paul Frees, who was elderly and not very well at that moment. So he sounded really rather out of breath and sickly. So I tried to fix that with editing. Didn't really work, because he did Boris Badenov, but every line was about 3 words long and also coughing like I'm doing. So I tried to fix that. Didn't really work. But still, I got those all on the phone, and I got to thank them for their inspiration. And no, they will not have remembered me seconds after getting off the phone. But still, that was a great moment. And for comedy, legendary comedians from my youth, Robert Klein, big influence. Also met him on a press junket, and didn't really get to thank him because he was busy mocking me for talking like a puppy, because I guess that was my youthful voice that I had, and wearing a thermometer on my zipper of my jacket because it was cold up in Syracuse where this interview was. So I guess that's my memory of Robert Klein, was being playfully mocked by a big comedian. But still, I will still count him as an inspiration. And the classic comedy albums. Look it up if you can. When You're in Love, the Whole World is Jewish, and you don't have to be Jewish. If you're not Jewish, none of the jokes may land, but the legendary 1960s actors and comedians doing the performances, they brought a certain amount of realness and genuine comedy that has stuck with me. So yeah, I'll count those as influences.
Understood. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
Sure.
For comedy, do you ever write your own scripts or skits and like kind of include some of your characters? Like, what if they talked with each other or anything? Just out of curiosity.
Not with the characters I'm doing now, because they don't belong to me. They belong to Sega. They belong to.
Well, I mean, like personally, like, do you ever like, imagine or anything?
No, that's really that's crossing a line that the material is written by writers, and I respect the writers. So
understood.
No. But when I was doing the radio show prep, I was writing comedy bits where I would make either original characters or mediocre impressions based on celebrities in the news, and we would write comedy bits about them and song parodies.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for answering that. I wasn't sure if I should ask that or not, but still, thank you. How often do you still like write comedy skits and stuff?
Now that it's no longer my job, whenever the mood strikes me, I will do a song parody based on current events if something's really if I get an idea that I can't keep inside my head, I will go produce it. A lot of the times that's for podcasts that I listen to they were taking listener submissions for promos. Or actually, I started the trend of listener submissions for promos because they came up with an idea, dots connected in my head. And I said, hang on, I've got a free hour, wrote something, took some stock audio and chopped it up. And I think I was interacting with Larry King because they were doing a Larry King bit. I said, hang on, Larry King has a radio feature that I can cannibalize and make it look like I'm talking to Larry. And Larry is being somewhat loopy and not really paying attention to me and just answering with weird little trivia factoids that he comes up with. Did that, made a promo. They loved it. They played it. I made some more based on stuff they were talking about. Like they talked about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I said, oh, hang on, I could do a decent impression of the child catcher. Let me take the soundtrack and chop up a promo. Did those. They talked about some other topics that led to song parodies. So I said, okay, I can write song parodies. Wrote some custom song parodies for them. Lost interest. Life got busy. They took less listener submissions, but still that inspired me. These days, what I'm most likely to do is if a scam call comes in with a fake computer repair guy, I'll call them up if they email with a phone number and waste their time and then record them. And there's some of those up on my SoundCloud.
I love that.
Thank you.
All right, one last question before we get to the speed round. Out of all the projects you've worked on, is there a character that is closest to your heart, or do you feel like doesn't get enough attention that you think it should?
There's early dramatic stuff. I love comedy, I love drama, I love acting in all genres, but my dramatic stuff doesn't often get enough love. So I will direct people to Jungle Emperor Leo, one of the earlier anime dubs that I did. Arguably the inspiration for The Lion King, depending on who you want to believe. If you want to believe Disney, no, it's not. If you want to believe anime fans, yes, it is. And Kimbo the White Lion, also one of the 1960s animes that I remember watching as a very young child. But there was an OVA of that, and I played Dr. Mustache, a safari-bound researcher. And I got to have a nice little dramatic moment with the cub and the cub's father. And that I was very proud of, even though it was years ago and I've grown and possibly improved since then. But even back then when I was just starting in anime dubbing, it's like, wow, that's a pretty cool performance. More people should see that.
All right, well, now let's get to the speed round where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly random questions and we're going to see how you do. You ready?
Cool. All right.
You kind of already are with this one. Okay. If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be? This is kind of, if you want to go Dr. Eggman, cool, do it. But if you want to branch it, go ahead.
The smartass.
What would your boss theme music be? And you can choose any song from anywhere.
Wow. The Saber Dance, which if you, here's an old reference, geezer alert, the Ed Sullivan Show and variety shows in the 50s and 60s would always have plate spinners on, where you put a plate on a stick and you spin multiple plates on multiple sticks. And the music for that was the Saber Dance. Thank you very much.
I love that.
Thank you.
If you were a superhero, what would your name be?
Resourceful Man. Not counting the 5 minutes it took me to look up a song on Google just moments ago, but I'm generally fairly resourceful with the internet and can find all sorts of answers to all sorts of things.
And that's your powers, finding answers?
Yeah, being resourceful.
Gotcha.
Just learning skills to do exactly what I need to do.
If you can live in the world of your favorite childhood show or movie, which one would it be and why?
The Jetsons, because of all the labor-saving devices. The Foodoraka cycle, just to make whatever food you want just by tapping in a primitive keyboard.
Yeah.
And taking a jet car to work that turns into a suitcase.
Yeah.
George Jetson's job, by the way, button pusher. He was there to press the button to start the machinery at Spacely Sprockets. That was his job.
What a nice job to have, huh?
Exactly.
Which character from your childhood favorite show or movie would you most like to have as a friend in real life?
Bullwinkle comes to mind, but would I really want to be friends with Bullwinkle? No, I don't think so. So hang on, there's a better answer to that question. Speed round, sure. Look at me thinking through the speed round.
That's the ironic twist of the speed round. Usually it takes people longer to answer these questions than anything else.
Yeah. I'm going to say random character who I got for when I was talking to the cast of Rocky and Bullwinkle on the phone, Wrong Way Peter Peach Fuzz, because he uses the classic Ed Wynn voice, and I love to do the classic Ed Wynn voice. So anyone who can spend all day doing the classic Ed Wynn voice, like Wrong Way Peter Peach Fuzz, hello, Rocky, I would find that hysterically fascinating.
If you could attend any fictional event, for example, the Ewok celebration in Star Wars Episode 6, which one would it be and why?
Great question. Wow. Well, the Cantina Bar in the original Star Wars film.
It's great.
With its crazy alien inhabitants, but the drinks looked good.
Yeah.
I'd love to find out in person.
I really want to know what blue milk tastes like.
Sure. Well, it's that they've done that. There's
You're right.
a merchandise tie-in with that, but that is not necessarily the same as the fictionalized version.
No. So the cantina scene?
Yeah, I would say.
Understood.
And of course, the catchy tune.
Yeah.
Everybody, all right.
If you had to guess, what would you say is the song you've listened to the most times in your life?
I could probably check my YouTube music playlist and figure that out. One of the podcasts I listen to, I guess I'll give them a shout out, the Mike Mauro Show. They've got a running bit where whenever they break into an argument, real or fake, especially around the holiday time, their bit is that they argue up to the post, radio term, kids. It's where the music stops and the vocals come in a song, of Andy Williams' The Most Wonderful Time of the Year. So they will start having an argument, and then in the background you hear, dun, 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 dun. It's the most wonderful time of the year. So that's their bit, and our family, being a family, can get argumentative too. And I have started to punctuate the crazy family arguments we have by having Most Wonderful Time of the Year as a favorite on YouTube Music. So when the arguments get so ridiculous, I will have our family talk up to the post of Most Wonderful Time of the Year. And love that. For Art Imitating Life, we took the auto train from here in the Northeast to Sanford, Florida to go to Disney one year. We got off the auto train and our first stop was getting gas for the car. The auto train, by the way, great concept. It's a train with fancy rooms or just seats if you don't want to spring for a fancy room, and cars, that car racks, they're auto racks.
Oh, okay,
where
cool.
They drive your car onto one of those auto transports, which are normally used for cars being transported from ocean ports to car dealers around the country. This is a passenger thing. You pay for your car. It's pricey, but well worth it. Your car rides 17 hours right behind you in the train, while you relax in comfort, getting meals on board, and it's great. We got off the auto train in Sanford, Florida one year, needed gas. I used GPS to get us to a gas station, and it was some difficult to get to gas station on the other side of the road in the opposite direction. And so I was trying to direct my wife, who was driving at the time while I was navigating, turn left, but you go through the intersection, and then on the side road is where the entrance to the gas station is. And she was having a hard time understanding my apparently not so clear directions. So we started arguing as we were listening to a Show Tunes show on the radio, pre-recorded. And what happened to be the next tune on the Show Tune show was Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Andy Williams. We were arguing, and I'm hearing in the back of my head, dun, 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 dun. So, of course, I talked up to the post. It's the most wonderful. And we just devolved into a fit of laughter with life imitating art. It was fantastic.
That's a strong story right there, too.
Exactly right. Never to be duplicated. And you wouldn't believe it if you weren't there.
That's hilarious.
Thank you.
Oh, my God.
I got to recount that story on the Mike O'Mara show, where I was one of their talking heads, talking not like what we're doing. And I said, here's a special Mike O'Mara memory that I had. And I recounted that story, and nobody really cared. But still, it abused me.
We care here. I care. That got me.
Longest speed round answer ever.
No, not even. There's been longer, I'm sure.
Perfect.
Do you like chili dogs?
In the pantheon of my favorite top hot dogs, it's probably fourth or fifth down the line. Cheese dog is first, nacho cheese dog if possible. Plain old mustard, depending on the type of hot dog. Barbecue and onions after that, and then probably chili dog. Just not a big fan of chili in general. That's
fair.
just me.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
It's a taco. It's a conjoined bun.
Yeah.
Split. It's a taco.
Now, I'll raise you. Then what is a hoagie and a sub? Those are sandwiches. They're conjoined bread.
They are usually conjoined breads, yes, depending on where you're having your hoagie or sub prepared. If they slice the bread, it becomes a sandwich by definition, I suppose. If the bread remains conjoined, that's still a taco.
See, we asked the important questions here on the Razzle Dazzle show. Would you ever consider getting a hedgehog as a pet?
I've been really close to them. We had a convention, an infamous convention, 2010 Sonic Con, Dallas, Fort Worth. Me, Lisa Ortiz, Pete Capella, Jason Griffith. Great time. Poorly promoted, poorly attended. It was actually, I don't want to get too specific with shaming people, calling them out, but a lady sold hedgehogs. She had a hedgehog breeding and selling business. This was the main point of this convention, but she figured, hedgehogs, Sonic, let's do a tie-in.
Right.
She made us believe it was officially sponsored by Sega. It was not. It was also not particularly promoted well. There were 4 of us on the stage. There were 4 audience members in the audience at the best of times. So we had a very, very intimate performance. The best part was the green room where there was omakase sushi, a sushi chef preparing his selections, served just for us, which was really great. And we went off and had some fun karaoke amongst ourselves. But as part of the hedgehog breeding, also in the green room, were hedgehogs, which he was trying to sell. Not to us necessarily, but saw them, looked at them, didn't get sold on the idea of having one as a pet. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you want a hedgehog for a pet, go ahead. But we're not big pet people after the dogs we had that didn't survive. Well, they survived long enough for their lifespan, but enough to convince us we don't need more pets in our life. We have children.
Understood. They're supposed to be very hard to take care of too.
Yeah, they're not really designed to be pets, but you know, if that's your thing and if you can handle it, go for it.
What activities or pursuits most make you lose track of time?
The internet, but more specifically, my hobbies. Here are my hobbies. And it's, if you like eccentric, these are my hobbies. As I mentioned, we like show tunes. We get show tunes from the UK that we probably shouldn't because they're supposed to be geo-restricted. And, I guess there might be ways around that. But they're also, some of them are available on catch-up and on demand. Some of them are not. We like these specific show tunes on these specific stations. So what I do is I have a DVR type software that will record audio streams on a schedule. I record them. I import them into my digital audio workstation of choice and chop them up into proper podcasts. I make sure they start and end cleanly with their little opening music and closing music. If there are commercials, I can remove them, or at least if there are news breaks, I remove the news because after a day or so, if we don't get to it on the first day or so, the news is no longer topical.
Yeah.
I will adjust the audio with a little compression if it's going to be played in the car. And then, of course, I feed it into a private podcast feed, so it shows up in my podcast player. But since it's in my podcast player, it has to have cover art. So I make custom cover art, either in the style of the legitimate cover art from the station in question, or based on other cover art for their live streams that they might have. So I get the right fonts and I steal the right assets for logos and artwork of the artists, of the hosts of the show. If there are liner notes, program notes from their tweets that they may have tweeted, I will copy those in. I now use a fancy AI thing to listen to the hour or 2 hour long program and extract playlist information. So it's basically a Shazam-like service, but it will take the entire show, break it up into songs, and give me the playlist of start time, title, artist, album. And I will then make a playlist so that when it plays back, the title and artist appears on my podcast player. And the podcast player has an AI thing that pulls custom artwork based on title, artist, album information So as I play it in the car on our Android Auto, the cover art shows up. That's really cool. And again, it's for an audience of 2. It's for me and my wife, which is why it's a private podcast. But still, I will spend far too much time not only researching how to do this and making custom spreadsheets to convert time stamps from minutes to hour, minutes, seconds, and converting time zones and extracting it and reconverting it so that I can do a merge into appropriate playlist so that you see the timestamp and then the song title is in bold and the album title is in italics.
Yeah.
So I have it all custom formatted for myself. And whenever there is a change in branding of the radio station, I will go on and redo my cover art. And I'm always looking to see, has anything changed? Should I go in and amuse myself with new cover art? And I spend far too much time doing that, but I could not be prouder of our own little private podcast network. It's the kind of thing that would be a job, but if it was a job, it wouldn't be any fun.
Right.
But just doing it just for us. And usually my wife doesn't always see all the program notes. She sees the cover art if we're in the car. But beyond that, most of the stuff I do, she doesn't see, but she hears it. And that's really all that matters.
What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
I hope he would enjoy the audio work and the video work that I'm doing and the funny voices that he was annoying his friends with in school. Having been turned into a career such as it is, I think he'd be very impressed.
Well, now it is time to recommend 3 people that when your episode comes out, you're going to share this podcast with and that you're going to help me get them on the show if you think they'll say yes.
Sure. I'm going to recommend 3 people who have been by my side through tough times of late, so they deserve to be paid back for their generosity. One of whom is Barrett Leddy. Barrett is a local actor in the New York area, doing all sorts of cartoons and stuff. But he has really made big headlines as becoming the de facto successor to the late, great Gilbert Gottfried.
Wow.
He does a spot-on Gilbert Gottfried impression, so much so that Disney has tapped him for some games based on Iago from the Aladdin films.
Right.
So he is carrying on that legacy in the most profitable way possible. He'd be fun to talk to just for that, among other stuff.
Yeah.
I will also recommend Erica Schroeder. Erica Schroeder, who 4Kids fans would know from, among other things, the voice of Luffy in the 4Kids dub of One Piece. She did some stuff on Sonic. She is currently, we appear in the same cartoon, which is airing in the UK, if not elsewhere. She plays Cheese and Cat in Boy, Girl, Dog, Cat, Mouse, Cheese. And I play Farmer Joe and some other incidental characters. And she is a heck of a nice actor. I would recommend finding her for the program. And then from slightly behind the scenes, but still in the world of video games, Dave Gilbert, founder and creative force behind Wadget Eye Games. He has been instrumental in revitalizing the adventure game genre, and he has allowed me help in a couple of his games and some other projects that he has overseen. He has been a swell guy in recent months, so I'd love to see you talk to him about his recent game successes.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for those recommendations. Yeah, we'll see what we can do to get them on the show.
Cool.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Gratitude. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, because otherwise I'm wasting my time. As I said before, I can make funny voices in front of a microphone, but if it doesn't end up in front of ears, at least one pair of ears, but preferably lots more, it's great. That is so great. Thank you for being there, for watching, and for listening. Thank you so much for being there.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for being on the show and for doing what you do. Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Jared, likewise, I'm sure a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you can chop this down into something coherent.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. If you want to hear more from Mike, be sure to follow him on his socials and be sure to check out his website, itsamike.com. Links to everything will be in the description down below. Be sure to let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links to them are down below. Be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Next time on The Razzle Dazzle Show.
I'm the type of actor where a lot of my acting choices and vocal performances come from myself. And I guess for the stuff I'm auditioning for and for the roles I've gotten, they just a lot of them happen to be leading ladies or characters that fans really emotionally connect with in some way, and who also kick butt. Like, I love kicking butt, it's fun. So yeah, it's funny how it kind of all worked out that way.
Tune in next time.